Welcome back, everyone, to the championship edition of Fireside Football. I'm Kendall Capps.
And I'm Andrew Williams.
All right, Andrew, it's championship weekend, my favorite weekend of the year in the NFL season.
You can tell Kendall got a new haircut. He's all decked out.
I did.
Go.
Well, hopefully I can, have a much better week than I did last week. I'm taking baby steps in the playoffs so far.
I won a game last week for the first time in the playoffs. I'm excited.
Yeah, you must be.
Let's take a look back at last week's games. Green Bay at Atlanta. They come in, and you think here's going to be a tight game. It's going to be
early on it
slugfest.
was. I mean, you had both teams going back and forth. Atlanta got a kick return, took the lead back, but Green Bay was able to sustain that offense. And that pick at the end of the first half by Tremont Williams, his third in the playoffs.
Not only that, but then Green Bay gets the ball coming out of half. Aaron Rodgers takes them straight down the field, scores another touchdown, and now you've got a blowout.
Yeah, pretty much stepping on their throat, and Atlanta's not the team to be able to come from behind by 21, so you knew Green Bay was going to march on at that point.
Right, and then on the other side, you've got Seattle at Chicago. Seattle comes in, they're 7-9, and you're thinking that maybe they've accomplished all they're going to accomplish, and then they just don't show up for the first half. They come out, put some points up in the second half. What did Chicago do to come out and get that early lead?
They were able to run the ball, and they were able to stop the run. Seattle didn't run the ball the way they did the game before, and they got a lead. And once they got the lead, their defense was not going to give it up. I mean, let's not forget, Seattle, they were 7-9. They were not a very good team, especially on the road, so it wasn't that hard to predict. I thought Chicago would run away. Seattle scored a few points late in the game, got a couple of nice drives. That one TD handed to Mike Williams that was awful nice to him.
Right.
But for the most part, Chicago was able to outclass them and move on.
Well, then what about this game this week? Green Bay at Chicago. They've played each other twice this year. The oldest rivalry in football. It's going to be a hard-hitting game. But do you think Chicago can come in and keep Green Bay's offense in check?
No. They're not going to be able to. Green Bay had sacked Chicago 9 times in their 2 meetings. They only got to Aaron Rodgers. Chicago did twice. I think that's going to be a big difference in this game. They're going to have pressure on Cutler. And we know that Cutler is prone to throwing picks and making some bad decisions. And unlike Seattle and Babineau, Green Bay doesn't drop interceptions. Their DBs, like Charles Woodson, they make sure when their hands are on it, they get the pick, and half the time they take it to the house. And I think that's going to be a big difference in this game.
Well, I think here in Chicago, I think weather's going to be a big factor. It's going to be snowy, it's going to be rainy, it's going to be cold and wet, and really I think a lot of times that favors your passing game. Your receivers get more footing and they know where they're going.
Which is kind of why you got to like Green Bay a little bit. That passing game is so
Well, actually,
explosive.
I think it's going to help Chicago get some space from those Green Bay defenders. I think that Green Bay secondary is one of their strengths, and I think they're going to be hurt by the weather. They're on the road in Chicago. I think Chicago is actually going to come out and surprise some people with a return trip to the Super Bowl.
Well, in the first 2 matchups, Green Bay outran Chicago, had 160 more yards than Chicago in those 2 matchups. They lost the first game. They had 18 penalties, a team high in their history. That's difficult to overcome, especially on the road. But in this game, Chicago, surprisingly, they're 20th against the pass. Their defense, you wouldn't think that they were quite that porous. And in comes this Green Bay passing attack. I think Green Bay is going to find a way to get to the Super Bowl.
All right, well, how about moving over to the AFC side? We've got Baltimore went into Pittsburgh last week and played a great game.
Great game. They're up 21-7. Everything looks good. However, it all went awry in the second half.
And I just think you've got Big Ben, who plays well. He's experienced. He's been in playoffs. And Joe Flacco, who's relatively new. And I thought it showed at times.
It did. And Big Ben, he's now 9-2 in his career in the postseason. So he's showing he can win those big games. And the hats off have to go to him. He made the big throw on 3rd and 16 with the game on the line that basically won that game.
An 8th string receiver, actually, that was in. Well, how about on the other side? The Jets went into New England and knocked out the Patriots. They talked a lot of trash. They came in and they backed it up. I know the Patriots are your squad.
Yeah, it was tough to take, but I got to say the Jets earned this victory. They went on the road and took it from New England. Like you said, they talked a lot of trash going in and they backed it up. Their defense was stupendous. The receivers for New England were not able to find more than a few feet of space. Even in the flat, there were only a few openings. Brady might have missed a couple of throws. He finally threw his first pick going back to mid-August, and you thought that might happen with all that pressure of not throwing one in so long. But ultimately, the Jets, they wanted this game more, and they took it from the
Well, and you have to think, is Rex Ryan kind of the Bill Belichick antithesis? Bill Belichick never lets his players talk. Came out, benched Wes Welker in the first drive of that game, and that's the drive where Brady threw his only interception for the last however many games. And he didn't throw one for the rest of the game. That if he has Welker to go to on that play, maybe that drive goes down the field, and in which case maybe Rex Ryan won the head game with Bill Belichick going into
I think
this
he did. I think they outcoached him going for that punt, that fake punt on your own side of the field in the first half. There were a couple questionable calls, and I think the young age of these Patriot players, they started so many rookies and second-year men, it made a difference, and they made some mistakes that they typically don't make. And the Jets took it.
Do you think now they're not talking a lot of smack this week? Do you think they'll roll into Pittsburgh here in a game where no one seems to be fueling the fire? Are they going to have as much emotion? Can they go into Pittsburgh and knock off?
It's going to be a great game. It's going to be very tough. They won in there earlier this year, 22-17. They were able to get a safety. They were able to get pressure on Big Ben, and I think they're going to do the same again this week. They're going to get to Big Ben. Big Ben only has 2 offensive linemen left from his starting crew. He's got Polamalu back this week, but he's got McFadden questionable, and their defensive end Aaron Smith is out for this game. He's been ruled out, so they're going to have a hard time getting to Sanchez. And if Sanchez has a little bit of time, he has the arm to be able to fit it into those tight windows.
Well, and I agree with you. I like the way the Jets are playing, but I think at home, these two teams play so similar. Both teams run the ball. Both teams play defense. And I think you've got to go down to the quarterback. And you look, and Ben Roethlisberger has been to 2 Super Bowls. He's 9-2 in the playoffs at this point in his career. And Sanchez is another one of this younger generation.
But don't forget, Sanchez is now 4-1 in his career in the postseason in 2 years, including 2 road victories. And he's looked good and made a lot of big throws in situations that you wouldn't expect a young guy like that to make.
I agree, but I think he's also prone to cracking at times. He didn't look as great last year in the AFC title game, and I think he's going to come out and be harassed. Troy Polamalu being back, I think, is huge. That does a lot to a quarterback's
but we still
mind.
don't know if Polamalu was fully healthy.
Very true.
He didn't look fully healthy last week with the way he played. He missed quite a few tackles. He didn't play maybe his best game. I'm sure he could have taken some of those back.
Yeah, and I think it's going to be a close game, but I'm taking Pittsburgh at home.
Well, I think just like the earlier game, I think Pittsburgh will have more yards. I think they will produce more offensively. But I think the Jets and their defense, whether it's special teams with Brad Smith, who's now back, or something, maybe Cromartie, I think they find a way to win this game and go to the Super Bowl to play Green Bay.
Well, hopefully one of us will win 2 games this
Maybe,
week.
yeah. Well, I guess
we
we'll have
might
to
be
find
about
out.
500.
Well, we're hoping so for the playoffs. All right, for Andrew Williamson, I'm Kendall Capps. Hope you enjoyed the show, and catch us again on Fireside Football for our Super Bowl show.